Before this video begins, I want to give a big shout out to my top tier Patreon supporters, Daoist Soulweaver and William the Weeb. You guys are legends. If you want to support the channel beyond the much appreciated like and subscription, then head on over to my Patreon via the link in the description below. Now let's get started. So, the second season of Sonic Prime has dropped and I have a lot to say. I think it has some great things going for it, but also some serious low points. And yes, I know technically this story hasn't concluded with the fact that we still have 8 episodes to go, but I think there's enough here to spark some discussion. And in this case, I wanted to specifically discuss the main villains of the show, those being the Chaos Council, and why I think they are absolutely awful villains. Especially from their writing and characterization. Now, a long time ago I did an entire character analysis dedicated to Robotnik, and a big portion of that video was dissecting what made him such a great villain, that being the fact that he was a legitimate threat with writing and characterization that supported that notion. He was a bit goofy at times, yes, but that didn't stop him from being a credible villain. It was the perfect blend of seriousness and silliness, the evil and ego. And when it worked, such as his phenomenal writing in Adventure 2, it made him that credible threat that we've come to know and love. Then the 2010s showed up and decided to turn him into an absolute joke, to the point where even though he did perform villainous acts, it was difficult to see him as a good villain. I mean, just look at this guy, he makes the Phantom Virus look threatening. Cut to Sonic Prime, where we lose Robotnik after the very first episode, and in his stead there is the Chaos Council, a group of 5 alternate Eggmen that rule New York City, a dystopian city built over Green Hill after they forcefully took over the land, enslaving its denizens and splitting it between them. And don't even get me started on the fact that we got Green Hill again. Hearing about this council throughout the first episode and then being built up in the background was honestly kinda cool. I mean, these guys have to be some serious villains in order to take over what is essentially an entire universe, Shatterverse. And then after Sonic gets captured, we get the big reveal and oh boy, that's the big threat. That's what everyone is terrified of. These are the guys that destroyed Green Hill and made New York. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Dr. Babble, Dr. Deep, Dr. Don't, Dr. Dunnit, and Mr. Dr. Eggman. God, I hate these names. The only name that's actually kind of alright is Mr. Dr. Eggman, because that ties into the character's vanity without sounding overly obnoxious or plain stupid. Kinda like how in Holes where we had that one character called Mr. Sir. Damn, I never thought I'd make a reference to Holes on this channel. The writing for these guys doesn't help with their image either. They all feel extraordinarily one-note with their characteristics and never deviate from that. They show no growth or change or anything. These guys can basically just be boiled down to old man, emo gamer, annoying baby, millennial, and vain guy. Actually, Mr. Dr. Robotnik is the only one that was any kind of decent. Mostly because he's the closest one to resembling the original Robotnik in terms of personality. Like I brought up in the Robotnik character analysis, credibility is hugely important for a villain. Can you legitimately buy them as a threat? And the Chaos Council makes it difficult. Don't get me wrong, they do evil things, no doubt about it, but 2010's Eggman did evil things and I couldn't buy him as a villain because he didn't feel like a threat. Now we have a bunch of one-dimensional Robotniks that are made to be jokes because they are written as jokes or parodies, and so they lose that credibility as villains. These guys weirdly remind me of the Deadly Six, and that is never a good thing. They too were a group of individuals with one-note personalities. You know, crazy guy who wants a fight, old man that's old, girl that's vain, emo guy, fat guy who likes food, and evil guy that's the leader. And for some reason, the IDW comics won't just let these guys die. Now, I'm not saying that having characters deviate towards a single personality is necessarily a bad thing, but when its personalities as generic as these, it becomes very grating very quickly. And I know that there's people out there who put forth the argument that each of these 5 Eggmen are meant to represent a single characteristic present in the Dr. Robotnik that we know and love. You know, Mr. Dr. Eggman representing his evil and vanity, Dr. Deep being his ego, Dr. Babble being his high temper, Dr. Dunnit showing his cunning or deceit, and Dr. Don't representing the tech side of things. I don't particularly buy this defense of the characters or think it was intentional, but even if it was, Why would we want them split to begin with? That just takes the great and complex character of Robotnik and simplifies it into 5 one-note villains that are either boring or just outright annoying looking at you, Babble. Seriously, is anyone out there that likes this little shit? This kind of writing makes it so difficult to buy the fact that these guys were the ones who managed to take over Green Hill. I mean, just look at them. It isn't believable at all. And believability is extremely important in writing, especially when it comes to plot points that the story hinges on. Like these guys building New York in the first place. It actually ends up taking away from the grim atmosphere of the city, knowing that these are the guys that are running things. You know what we could have got instead of these 5? A version of Eggman that took his attributes like his evil and narcissism to a whole new scale. Make him a tyrannical version of the character that makes you truly believe that he conquered that world. Make him something to be feared, something that nobody wants to fuck with. An Eggman with no limitations whatsoever. I mean, we've seen that Robotnik, from time to time, has a soft side that kinda humanizes him. Like in the ending of Sonic Adventure 2 or even in Frontiers with Sage. Now imagine this version of the character having none of that holding him back. A version of the character that didn't rely on cheap gimmicks like these guys. That could have been interesting. But no, we got stuck with these Tesco value versions of the character. I also want to quickly talk about the designs here because I'm not the biggest fan. Some of you may think I'm being a bit hypocritical here because I enjoy Robotnik's design but I'm not a fan of these, but there is a key difference between this design and these designs. Robotnik's design nicely juxtaposed the evil of his personality. It was almost as though that goofy egg-shaped design with that big-ass mustache and smug grin lured you into a false sense of confidence, thinking that he's some kind of big joke. But then his actual character dawns on you and it makes this design feel more sinister if anything because you know what Robotnik is capable of. I mean, this is the man who blew up half the moon as a statement. Then we go to these 5 ding-dongs and they just look goofy to match their personalities. And since their personalities aren't interesting or threatening to begin with, it really does a disservice to the impact of the design, unlike Robotnik. The only thing I kinda liked was that Mr. Dr. Robotnik wears a toupee because he's vain and does panic when he loses it, but that's about it. Adventure Robotnik, Satayem Robotnik, and Movie Robotnik are actually credible villains that are threatening. All of their actions are not only evil, but more importantly, believable. Hell, we even had IDW Robotnik going all out with the Metal Virus saga and that genuinely got pretty dark at times. Prime actually tries to get us to think that Mr. Dr. Eggman tricking Nine into giving them the idea to build Chaos Sonic makes him look smart and cunning, but in reality, it just makes this entire council look stupid for needing the help of Nine to get an idea on how to beat Sonic that isn't just making their generic robots bigger. No, seriously, that's actually what they did. I mean, just compare this to Robotnik playing 4D chess in Adventure 2 where he literally outplayed everyone to confirm his suspicions of there being a fake Chaos Emerald, as well as actually getting the closest to outright killing Sonic by trapping him in the pod and firing him into space, and it's no contest. This scene right here is peak Robotnik, and I've talked about this scene so many times on the channel from many different character perspectives, so I'm not gonna do it again, but go watch it if you haven't. Well, it's pretty clear that these guys aren't threatening, so what are they? I was hoping that they would at least provide good comic relief, but no. Seriously, nothing they do is funny. The bickering with each other is boring and repetitive, although I do like how that leads to the plot point that they had to split the city 5 ways because they're incapable of sharing it. Their constant joke of calling Nine the wrong animal isn't funny, their interactions with Sonic aren't funny. I don't know, maybe it's just me or the fact that I'm not the target audience, but it really says a lot when this one scene from Adventure 2 of Robotnik scratching his ass while watching the news is funnier than anything these guys have done. Hell, even though they dropped his villainy in Sonic Boom, Eggman was still at the very least funny. In the TV show, that is. And another big aspect of Robotnik is the narcissism, the ego, and I think that for the most part it's actually done pretty decently. Looking at New York, you do actually see the Eggman face plastered in a bunch of places, including a massive sigil present at their main base. So already this is better than Sonic Forces. No, I will not let that game go. Hell, at the end of the second season, they summon a giant version of the original Robotnik to fight Sonic, and that is so in character for the level of narcissism that Robotnik would have. It kinda reminded me of Movie Robotnik summoning the giant Death Egg robot in his likeliness, you know, big Eggman face and all. And speaking of which, I do wish this kind of egotistical design was reflected more in the robots in Prime, because while these aren't the worst designed things in the world, the sheer overuse of these generic robots gets repetitive and makes them feel more akin to the robots from Sonic Forces that didn't have any semblance of Robotnik to them. I think that something closer to the robots from Sonic Heroes would have actually been a better fit, seeing as those did carry that Eggman-ish design and, you know, did vary between levels instead of being the same thing over and over again. Imagine a darker twist on those kinds of robots to match the dystopian atmosphere of New York. Don't get me wrong, they do have standouts like Chaos Sonic and Rusty Rose, but I'll talk about those another time. Ultimately, I just think that the Chaos Council are poorly written and underdeveloped villains that fail to be a threat. And I know that there's going to be those people out there who will say something like, oh, it's simple because it's made for kids, and to that I say, don't kids deserve better? The whole franchise is aimed towards a younger audience and yet has produced some fantastic villains. I mean, I have entire videos on just these two. The whole it's made for kids thing is just a lazy excuse and nothing more. Honestly, even though we still have 8 episodes left of Prime, I don't think that these guys are really going to improve as villains. As of now, I think that these guys are just gonna take a big backseat, especially since there is a far superior villain that we're getting in the form of Nine, and I cannot wait to discuss his character. Hopefully he gets his time to shine and we fully explore his morality against that of Sonic's and use both to elevate their characters even further. I'm honestly just really hoping for something comparable to the dichotomy between Melina and Sonic from Black Knight, but as always, only time will tell. Anyways, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and turn notifications on to keep up with all future content. If you want to go above and beyond in supporting the channel, then why not check out my Patreon? The link is in the description as always. And speaking of which, a very big thank you to all of my patrons. You guys are legends. But with all that said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see all you guys next time.